Welcome back to the second podcast episode from our Sailboat Diaries series down in the Caribbean. If you're not familiar with the series, I would highly recommend you go check it out on our YouTube channel before listening to this full episode. If you did listen to the previous podcast episode, you will hear some overlaps, some repeated stories, but for the most part, we go super in depth on everything that happened and some of the stuff that didn't quite make the series. But before we get into this episode, I did want to let you guys know that we released a brand new merch line alongside the release of this series. We released some brand new sun hoodies, some brand new performance hats, as well as a limited run of Sailboat Diaries gear. This is definitely the best gear that we've put out to date, and I think you guys will think the same as well. So if you're interested in helping support the podcast, helping support the channel and the films that we make, it would mean a lot if you guys check that out. It's at wild-fly.com/shop. And now, let's get into the episode.
All I was thinking about was, can I hook this fish? I wasn't even thinking about it's got teeth and it's going to chomp them.
Can we pause here real quick? So I understand that's all you thought about, but let's just take a break here and discuss what was your game plan after you hooked it? Because that's what I want to know. It's what would you do after you hooked it? Because at one point you were hiding behind Adam.
Okay, we'll get there. I didn't have a plan. I had the rod. And
Step one, hook the fish.
I'm gonna hook the fish.
Let's complete step one.
When there's a 4-foot fish on the flat, you're gonna cast at it.
Welcome back. What are we doing?
We're podcasting today.
I'm not that drunk yet, so it's a win.
Hopefully my
Thank
shadow
God.
isn't all up in you. But
You look great.
Sorry, it's sunset and it's a little funky lighting here. For those of you watching,
Probably going to be funky from start to finish.
It smells funky in here.
Yeah. So second podcast from this trip. We have been doing this the last couple of trips that we've been on, where we just kind of do a recap, like a deep dive into the trips. I think it's really fun to talk, just kind of recap it and us talk back through the trip, because we get to kind of relive it. And usually after a fishing trip, if we were just doing this for shits and giggles, we probably wouldn't fire the mics up and maybe have this conversation. So I think it's fun to kind of reflect on the trip. Maybe we can talk about some things we learned, talk about some stuff that maybe doesn't make the final films, kind of some of the behind the scenes. And some of this might end up in the film, in the final films. So,
wow.
Yeah. I think this is a cool way
pressure.
for the podcast community, for the crew to listen to more in depth on some of the stuff that you see on the YouTube channel and on the films.
I hope I can make it in the final film.
I hope you can too.
I won't.
It's gonna be a great frame, and I'm just gonna be like, whoop, shadow.
All right. I'm gonna try my hardest tonight.
So where do we begin?
Man, I don't even know where.
In the beginning, God created bonefish.
And it was good.
And then he created flats on the second day. And on the third day, he created the crab pattern.
Well, this was the first trip we've been on in a while where we're targeting a fish that at least us three, Steve, Brian, and I had never chased after, never caught. And I know this is all for us like a bucket list fish. So I think coming into this trip, we were all super fired up. Obviously hadn't done bone fishing, so we didn't really know what we were getting ourselves into. But we knew that they fought like crazy and they were in some beautiful places. And Adam had the place and the idea for it to make it happen.
Yeah.
Real quick, though. So I lost a bonefish fly on a tarpon a few weeks ago. Does that count at all? Because we saw bonefish at the same time. They were on this side of the boat, and I was guys on this side of the boat.
No, that does not count.
Okay, fair enough.
That just counts as you breaking off a tarpon.
I don't like to think like that. It makes me sad.
So I think to start out, coming into this, what was everyone's expectations? Like, how are we feeling? What did you guys kind of expect, or, about the whole trip and bonefish in general?
To your point earlier, it's definitely a bucket list fish for me. We all have that ranking of fish that we want to go after, and I get that you can go for bonefish even stateside. You don't have to go to an exotic place for that. And we've discussed that trip, but Adam's like, dude, we have to go here because the bone fishing that you will find down here is on the next level. He's like, you'll go there, you'll catch a bonefish there, and you'll never want to bonefish anywhere else. And I was like, yeah, I'm sold. Let's do it. And so That was the expectation I had coming in here. It was more of a headhunting game, not a numbers game, and it delivered. It took every ounce of patience and lack thereof patience that you can see when I spear a very nice setup of a rod into the surf. And but we got it done. It took a little bit of time. It took a lot of trial and error. It took a lot of R&D and just trying to figure it out all. But it paid off, and I'm more than happy to say that every bit of this trip was exactly what I expected, even more so. And I'm so glad we made it down here.
Okay. We'll unpack some of these certain scenarios like what Steve just talked about, but I feel like we're just trying to gather like general expectations before the trip actually happened. So
were you nervous about the trip? Were you excited? Like, why were you excited? Like, was it what you thought? Was the
there you go.
Was the boat what you thought? Was the fishing what you expected?
I came in here with zero expectations, and I enjoyed every bit of it.
Love it.
That's about it.
Yeah.
Okay.
Adam did all the research for it, had everything laid out for us. I know what bonefish are. I've fished for carp in Pinhook Creek. So I
Spot burn.
I'll burn.
Spot burn.
There's no fish there anymore to burn anyway. So who cares? So I have a general understanding of how to fish for these in a sense, but at the same time, this is a brand new scenario for me. My first real saltwater experience was 2 weeks before this trip, and so I came in here just understanding that I didn't know what I was doing, and if I could just have a good shot at one, it would be a good trip.
Yep.
And that's it. I just wanted to come here. I wanted to have a good shot at it, and if I could, I would be happy with that because I don't have the saltwater experience behind it. I'm extremely noob to this, extreme rookie to this, and I knew I had work to do. So overall, that's how it was for me.
There we go.
I was in the same place as Steve. Well, I had a little bit more saltwater experience, DIY experience, but like I didn't really know what to expect coming into this, and I just wanted to at least get 1 or 2 shots at a bonefish, and it was number 1 on my list. Bonefish was number 1 on my list coming into this trip, and
Nice.
There's like obviously way better or way more interesting fish to me to obtain, but I felt like on my list, the bonefish was way more easy to obtain. So that's why I kind of put it up there to number 1. There's obviously like cooler species, I feel like.
More realistic for you to make a trip.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. So that's why bonefish was number 1. And yeah. So I was pretty excited coming into here.
I think, too, from having some redfish experience and really being so, like, every time I leave a red fishing trip, I'm just so stoked and cannot wait to go back. I'm telling my friends, I'm moving down to the coast. Like, that's always how I feel. And I think it is because it's so much different from what I grew up doing with trout fishing and then smallmouth fishing and everything. You're fishing when you're trout fishing. Like, you're running indicator rigs, you're running dry dropper, you're constantly casting and constantly moving. But with the bone fishing and just the saltwater in general, most of the time you're hunting these fish. And you only get 1 or 2 shots maybe at a fish. Or maybe you only cast like 5 times during the whole day. So you have to make those 5 shots count. And I think having that experience with redfish and then coming into this, being really excited to chase another, like a sight fishing type of deal, but in a completely new environment, completely new part of the world that I've never been to. Always kind of wanted to explore, but it never seemed like a possibility. It still doesn't feel like we did this trip.
Yeah.
Like, bonefish, I feel like growing up, getting into fly fishing, you see it on these films and you hear about it in fly shops and stuff, but it just seems so exotic. Like, I'll never be able to do that. But the fact that we made it here and did the trip and now being able to kind of reflect on it, it's pretty wild.
I at least personally think I think that's a misconception.
Right. It's a total misconception.
Because I think they are a pretty obtainable fish. Like you said, you kind of put it at the top because you somewhat felt like it was an attainable fish.
It's more obtainable to me than like Taiman or
for sure,
or like Golden Dorado or something.
I mean, I think a lot of people in the U.S., I mean, you've got Hawaii's got a lot, and so does Florida. Flights to Florida are cheap.
Yeah.
You can get to Florida easy. I mean, and there's a lot of DIY water around bonefishing. You can get out of the country easily. Mexico's got a ton of bonefish.
Bahamas.
The Bahamas have a ton of bonefish. Everywhere in the Caribbean has a bunch of bonefish. They have really cheap flights down there. They've got cruises down there. I mean, yes, it would cost you more than taking a road trip to, maybe Montana or East Tennessee or the Northeast, wherever, to go trout fishing. Might take you a little more money than that to get out to go on a DIY bone fishing trip, but really not that much. If you paired, okay, I'm going to take a vacation and I'm going to go on a bone fishing trip, it really is not a very expensive trip to go on.
I feel like if you're from the East and like we're from, and then you maybe make a trip out to Montana or something, you're flying out, you spend money on lodging, you spend money on flies, whatever you get down there. I feel like it's pretty similar pricing. It might be a little more expensive, but if you just swap that trip out for a saltwater trip, I feel like it's totally doable.
I don't think it's pretty negligible whether you're going to go on a trip to Montana or a trip to Belize or Mexico to go bone fishing.
Yeah.
It's pretty comparable.
Yeah. Obviously, if you're going to go international, there's just a little more logistics now with COVID stuff and, running it, or also passports and stuff. There might be a little bit more like logistically for you to do, but I really don't think it's that bad.
If the logistics stop you from bone fishing because you got to fill out the paperwork to get back in the country and get a QR code, you don't deserve the bonefish. Go home.
It really wasn't that hard. That's all I'm going to say.
I'd leave it right there.
Yeah, I think the entire time driving back and like traveling back here, we've just been on Google Maps looking at places around the world.
We're already planning
different
number
flats.
2.
We're like, all right, this is sick. And you realize how many flats there are.
That's insane. Absolutely insane.
I don't know. It's a little crazy. Like, we came and kind of did this trip for a lot of reasons other than just the fishing. I feel like, we obviously we're talking about the fishing, but there's a reason we came to where we did, and the reason that we did it here. I think it's a great bone fishery, but there's a ton of great bone fisheries out there. You can look this stuff up all over the place. If there's guides in the area that guide for bonefish, guess what? You can go do a DIY trip there. Like, no matter where it's at. There's so much good information on bone fishing online that you could find a flat nearly anywhere that either you or your significant other wanted to go to, either a lodge or a little resort or something, or just go get a hotel on the beach somewhere.
Yeah.
And don't spend a ton of money to go do it.
Well, like what we found out on this past trip was how convenient the dinghies were.
Yeah.
I was kind of nervous coming into it because all you see on Instagram, all you see on YouTube or whatever is people fishing out of skiffs, people with guides or whatever fishing out of the boat, and you're like, man, we can't rent one of those. But we had 2 dinghies that we just motored out to our spot, anchored the dinghies, and we had miles and miles of flat that we just walked around.
Yeah.
And that did the trick. So if you can go down and just get a cheap hotel somewhere,
kayak,
rent a dinghy or a kayak.
Board.
Oh yeah.
We saw people, fishing off stand-up paddle boards and stuff. Like, that's perfect.
As long as you can anchor it or beach it or something.
Yeah. That's perfect for it.
Yeah.
I think one of the best things too for bonefish is it's a pretty attainable fish as far as like practicing goes, but then it also as far as like getting there and catching one. Obviously your expectations, when you go on any saltwater trip need to be very drastically different than if you're going bass fishing or trout fishing. But there's a lot of other species that you could fish for in the US that are similar to either like, say, you're going on a bone fishing trip and you want to like prepare or practice or something. Like we already talked about, redfish are pretty similar. Carp is another very similar species. They call them like the golden bones and
the redneck bonefish.
Yeah. Like go carp fishing, maybe take a carp guide or something. Go to a redfish trip or a carp trip. And I think they're very similar so that way when you do finally, if you put in a little bit of legwork and you finally show up to the bonefish flat and you're like, okay, I kind of have a rough idea of what I'm doing, I think the chances of you being pretty successful by yourself are relatively high.
Yeah.
Like I don't feel like they're super picky. if
Yeah,
you
the
pick-
fly choice, I don't think you don't need some special fly. You just need a couple of
Yeah.
variety. Some shrimp, some crab.
the biggest thing is having the different depths. You got the different weights of flies, and I think that's the biggest thing. Is just as long as you pick the right depth for what we were doing. We did throw out one shrimp pattern that just totally got refused.
Well, and I think that was more or less the flat that we were fishing too. We went
Right.
from a sand flat to more of a coral and sand
Right.
flat where there was a lot more crabs there,
Yeah.
and that's what those fish wanted was actually crabs. So they
And so we-
were keying in on the shrimp
Right. So we swapped to a crab. Boom.
immediately.
We caught 3, or we hooked 3 on that crab that day. Like as soon as we got there. So
You don't have to call me out like that.
I call both of you out. But
Oh,
anyway,
you're getting called out.
but I think generally, yeah, you don't need a ton of flies. It's definitely not like going trout fishing.
Dude, the amount of gear that we used was almost hysterical coming from a trout world.
Oh yeah.
All we had was literally a rod with our leader on it and our line or whatever. We had fly and that was it. Like you had a pack with a fly box
that we didn't use
that we barely used.
hardly at all.
I don't like one rod. I don't think we switched flies the entire trip.
I
We
used
only
one
lost
fly
one
the entire time.
Yeah,
Yeah.
we only lost one fly on
I'm
a
sorry.
fish.
I'm
Not,
sorry.
I'm not calling you out. I'm just telling you. We only lost between the 4 of us one fly for the whole trip. So, like the amount of gear that you need to do, you definitely don't. If you were going to say, okay, I'm going to fly out to Montana and go trout fishing by myself, you would spend so much more on flies than if you to like really get set up.
Yeah.
Than if you were going to come down here. You need
Yeah.
12 flies.
Maybe bring an extra fly line in case something messes
Yeah,
up.
pack
but
a spare fly line, some spare leaders, some spare tippet or whatever,
That's about all you need to change.
and a dozen flies.
It's not like you're going to show up to the flat and then it's like, oh, well, there's not shrimp here anymore. Or there's not crabs here anymore.
Yeah.
It's like those are the 2 things that are on the menu, and those are probably the 2 things we're going to use. And,
Yeah. Get a
and,
few crabs, a few shrimp, and then a few different weights, and maybe 2 or 3 colors, and you're done. So,
And a bite guard for Scotty.
Yeah, you were saying we only lost one fly.
well,
That's wrong.
All right, at casting for bonefish, we only lost one. I knew you were going to lose that fly. I just let you do it.
Let's run through. That was a pretty intense situation. So here's what happened. Essentially, I forget what day it was, but B and I roll up to the flat. You guys had beat us there because you had the faster dinghy. Y'all were out, looking for tails or whatever. And we roll up and anchor the boat up. And we had just saw a tarpon, like where we were pulling in. So I had the 10 weight ready to go. I was like, oh shit, we're going to cast at him. And then you guys are starting to walk back towards the boat. And you guys just jump out of the water. What happened there? Exactly.
Yeah, so Adam and I had ran that flat, and we were walking back up to the boat to get a beverage, as it were, and came across a 4-foot barracuda, and
A big one.
a big old barracuda. And I don't know if you ever seen a barracuda, but them teeth, they ornery. You don't want to get near them.
It's a scary looking
Yeah.
fish.
And so Adam and I are like, and this thing's not scared of us. Like a lot of the like reef sharks and lemon sharks that we saw there in the shallows and the flats, that they get close to us, they'd see us, and they would just spook. Oh boy, was not spooked.
They're territorial. I'm not saying like I thought it. I'm not like, oh, we're about to get attacked by this barracuda. But there are reported attacks on people,
As we
But-
found out.
as we know. But still, it just puts me uneasy being in the
close to
water.
that.
Shin deep water.
Shin deep water with a 4 to 4.5 foot barracuda that has some very big teeth that is not scared of you.
Oh, we're slapping our rods in the water and stuff, trying to spook him off. He's like, I don't care. I'm gonna keep doing me.
Yeah.
And I just see this.
Oh yeah, we're
I just
yelling
see
at you
this
about that.
shadow in this massive fish. And because I just saw the tarpon. So I figured, oh, it's a tarpon for whatever reason. And so I jump out there with the 10 weight, just kind of running out to get in casting range. Make a cast. I lead him with the 10 weight, strip, and he turns on the fly.
Yeah.
And I keep stripping, and I keep casting
he
at him.
eats.
He eats,
And you set the hook.
and I didn't know. And I keep casting at him. And Adam's like, dude, I don't think you have a fly on anymore.
You hear that back cast and you hear that bull whip. You're like, there's not a fly
We,
there anymore.
we look at it, clean bite.
Oh, yeah.
So we quickly put on another one. He's still kind of
Now,
cruising
why
around
did we
there
quickly put on another one?
because
What's the definition of insanity?
Doing the same thing over and over and expecting a different outcome.
Okay.
Einstein.
We just thought maybe this time.
Maybe this time. You know, just set it
That
quicker.
last one was a fluke.
yeah, no,
There's teeth that are this big. There's no way.
All I was thinking about was, can I hook this fish? I wasn't even thinking about like, oh,
So,
it's got
well,
teeth and it's gonna chomp the.
Can we pause here real quick? So I understand that's all you thought about, but like, let's just take a break here and discuss what was your game plan after you hooked it. Because that's what I want to know. Is like, what would you do after you hooked it? Because at one point you were hiding behind Adam.
Okay, we'll get there. I didn't have a plan. I had the rod and I was
Step
like,
one, hook the
I'm gonna
fish.
hook the fish.
Let's complete step one.
When there's a 4-foot fish on the flat, you're gonna cast at it. That's just simply put it. But then Adam and I go out there. I was like, Adam has a GoPro, he's filming, and we just track down this fish, make a cast on him, and this
different fly. We changed
different
flies.
fly, different fly.
Ready to roll.
This fish is still cruising around.
Did you put a bite guard on this time?
Well, it didn't have a bite guard. It had 40 pound.
Yeah.
That is what I normally use for tarpon as like a tarpon bite guard. I've found like 40 pound is generally pretty set.
But tarpon don't have sharp teeth.
They do not.
Okay.
Sorry, I'm just
Remember, I wasn't thinking. I was thinking catch the fish.
I'm just trying to lay the facts out for the viewers. That's fair.
Yeah.
So it had 40 pound. We put a
40
brand
pound.
new minnow. Pretty much the exact same thing you just ate.
Yeah. We get out there, make a cast at him. I thought it was a pretty decent cast with the wind and the situation. He turns on the fly, starts heading straight towards Adam and I. And you know you've seen in films or whatever, guys like running backwards as they're stripping the fly. Well, that happened. We see a 4-foot barracuda start coming right towards us, which is pretty terrifying. Because I mean, he's not going to attack you, but you just don't know that. And so we're stripping this fly. He's coming at us. I'm like hiding behind Adam as we're running backwards. And sure enough, he eats it again. And meanwhile, you guys are watching from afar, just like laughing at me, laughing at the situation. You saw the whole thing.
Yeah, we're sitting there just posted up on the front of the dinghies there, just laughing our butts off at this thing. And I guess B, what were your thoughts on this whole process? Because it was interesting to say the least to watch this unfold.
Oh, I was sick at the time, so I was not feeling too great. But even through my sickness, I was able to awaken from the bow of the boat and laugh my ass off at this fish cruising up the flat after these guys, and them running backwards. And
I felt Scotty was about to climb on my shoulders and just be up here casting from. Like, what's that pool game where you get on each other's shoulders, chicken or whatever?
Yeah.
Felt like you were about to be up on my shoulders.
yeah, while that barracuda's just eating all the meat around your ankle bones.
I didn't realize in the moment, but when you're not really thinking when a 4-foot barracuda is swimming towards you. And I was just like, hiding.
We were both back.
We
And
were
I was
both.
like, whoa, what the fuck are you doing?
You're like, don't hide behind me.
All right. So what happened with that second fly?
Well, to our unsurprisingly enough, the fish ate, snapped the line like that. Didn't even feel him.
In a shocking turn of events, I would say.
I don't think he necessarily snapped it. He just sheared straight through it.
He just had a little bite and it was gone. So that was that. We didn't catch the barracuda.
There it went.
But
R.I.P. that fly.
next time we'll have a wire leader
Yep.
set up ready.
Yep.
Because we would have caught that fish, and that would have been wild, fighting that fish. in the
Yeah.
flat.
I would have gotten some really good footage from the from the dinghy if he caught that fish.
Yeah.
I've caught a couple pretty big barracuda. They are fun.
But like
They're a lot
while
of fun.
waiting.
No, I've never caught one while in the water with them.
Yeah.
I know that I want to do that, but it is what it is.
Well, backtracking a little bit, getting to where we fished was pretty. There were a lot of steps.
Yes.
It was a lot of logistics and a lot of separate traveling. Like it was a lot of flights, a lot of boat rides and everything. And we ran into a bit of a snare when we got to the ferry dock with Steve. Steve, you want to run us through what happened there?
No.
No comment.
Yeah, we had some issues with the COVID test I was supposed to have to get in country. You have to have, one for 24 hours ahead of time. And
Yep.
there was an issue with my paperwork on that. And I was close to not being able to get. Yeah, so I was, very close to not being able to get into in country there because the paperwork wasn't filled out correctly. And thankfully, there were some very nice ladies at the dock there that were like, "Hey, go fill it out right now. Just send me the screenshots of your test," because we had the test done and everything. Like, we were fine. The paperwork just was not filled out correctly. And so I did that, went back over there once it was filled out correctly and submitted, and showed her that. She sent some pictures off of the screenshots I had. And thankfully, she had a friend over there that could help us out because it was Sunday. Like, who's working in the government on Sunday?
Yeah.
I work as a contractor for the government. We don't work Sundays.
Yeah.
Right.
So no one in the government's working Sundays, period. And push it through, and we were able to get on the ferry, 20, 30 minutes after I submitted it, we're able to get on there. And it's just like one of those things that, and as we saw this entire trip, the people out here, for the most part, are some of the friendliest people we've met. They're willing to help you out. You just got to ask. And thankfully they helped us out there.
Because the alternative was you would have to wait to get approved for up to 2 days.
Yes.
So when they flagged it and they're like, this doesn't work or whatever, you need to fill this other thing out to get approved. They were like, probably 2 days it'll take. So we thought we were going to be stuck for 2 days not getting.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. There was a feeling over the rest of the group like, well, dang.
Sorry, Steve.
Yeah, well, I don't know what Steve's going to be doing back. Left behind while we're out there catching bonefish.
I'll take that. I'll take that express ferry. I'll be there before you guys get there. Yeah. You know what I'm talking about.
You're already on the flat when we get there.
I'll be there already.
But we made it through. Fortunately, it got cleared. And we got on our way, and we got to sail.
Yeah.
Adam showed us how it's done.
Yeah.
Showed us how to run the sails and kind of keep things going.
How to do sailing.
How to do sailing.
Yeah. We found our vessel parked there after we ferried in. Old Seize the Day. That was the name. We got the rundown from the dockmaster and
good.
Got the rundown from the dockmaster, and then we set sail. We set sail that next morning, and it was a little bit different. We had some things to learn, and Adam was shouting at us like he always does, and we had to learn a couple things about sailing first. We had an experienced captain, but an unexperienced crew.
Some trial by fire for you guys.
Yeah. So it was like a little nerve-wracking. We're like, okay, what do we do now, Captain? Because we're totally dependent on you. We don't know what we're doing. So do you wrap this rope this way or that way? Or
it's always the way that you don't think that
But I don't know what the hell a lifeline is. Just say the fucking railing next time.
That's what it's called.
Just say the railing.
It's called a lifeline.
Bruh, have I sailed before?
I don't know.
We were also putting a lot of trust in Adam. We had never seen him sail before. I've never known you to be a sailor or anything. I know you know your way around a raft, but
this man's only artist on his playlist is Jimmy Buffett. Of course, he knows how to sail.
Yeah, if there's one thing you should know about Adam and his music taste is Jimmy Buffett is the only thing you're going to find.
He's a giant parrot head.
That's fine.
That's
what they call
If I've learned anything about Adam, it's through Jimmy Buffett.
Okay.
And pinned eggs.
And we got our fair share of Jimmy Buffett on this trip.
by like day 4 or 5, we were all Jimmy Buffetted out.
Yeah.
And
We were all Jimmy Buffett.
every single one of us.
Really?
Even Adam was. He's lying if he says anything different.
Jimmy had actually purchased a little property in Bryant's Head during the trip.
Yeah.
And
He was living there rent free.
Yeah. It was this one song that kept playing and playing and
I
playing.
believe it was called the Pascagoula Run.
the weather is here.
I listened to Ryan's Own Cowboy before I listened to that one again.
Yeah.
But yeah, tell us about your sailing experience. Why we should have trusted you, and not worried.
And what did you think about how we did? Or how do you think we did?
The first morning, how did we do?
So, my sailing experience has been down here in the Caribbean with my dad. I mean, my dad kind of taught me how to do it, and taking family trips here. So just kind of knew how the boat worked, knew how to operate it. And anyways, obviously, when you're kind of filling out, obviously they won't just rent anybody a boat. You got to fill out a bunch of paperwork and kind of have some proof of what you've done in the past, things like that. So that was a lot of the logistics that I was handling. And anyways, I mean, is the first day as a crew, I thought y'all did pretty good. I mean, it's as long as you've got someone who's like, all right, black rope is coming in. All right, now the black rope is going out. All right, now that rope is coming in and this rope is going out. And, as long as you've got like one person, I don't know that I could sail that boat myself, but as long as I have like someone, I'm like, okay, you run that winch, you release this, and then I'm still just steering the boat where it needs to be. Like it was perfect.
If you can follow instructions, you can sail.
Right? Yeah. If you're like, okay, we've got this rope, this is coming this way. So here's the winch. Here's how pull it by hand. Here's the winch. However you want to do it. So as long as we kind of got the ropes figured out, y'all kind of picked up really quick. Like, okay, these are like the couple of ropes that we're going to use the whole time. And then once we got that figured out, you guys were really good at like really starting to figure it out. Like when I said, okay, all right, we're going to turn. You guys, this rope is going this way. This rope's going the other way. Like y'all did pretty good with that.
It was easy to follow.
Yeah.
Like after we saw it a couple times and maybe messed up a couple times, it was really easy to pick up on what was going on and kind of the, how sailing works.
Yeah.
So we are all masters now.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so we're all super experienced sailing crew. Can sail any boat around the world, and any seas, any wind. We have no issues now.
So how long was that first stint? That first stint of the trip.
That first sail that we did was what, 6 or 8 miles, I think. We did pretty good. I mean, we made pretty good time. I mean, it took an afternoon, but
Yeah.
it's really pretty cool when you like sailing around. Like we get going and we turn the motors off. Like it's
just silent.
It's silent, but you're just sailing. I don't know. I like that.
That was a cool moment when we were like, me and Steve got up there and we put the mainsail up, and then you're like, hey, twist that, pull that over there, and then it was like, all right, we're good, guys, and then shut the motor off, and it was just cruising over the waves.
That's my favorite part of like, not of this trip or like the fishing, but definitely that's like my favorite part of the sailing aspect is you get the motor running. Because of course you use the motor to, motor around the harbors or the docks or wherever you're at. And then you finally kind of get out where you can sail, and then you kind of get going and you shut those motors down. That's my favorite thing to do. Love that.
It was really cool. But we sailed, you said 6 or 7 miles? Or?
It was like 6 to 8 miles that first day.
Yeah. And that was like my first, wow, there's roosters crowing everywhere.
Yeah,
there's a rooster right outside.
All over the road here.
It's really weird at dusk, not dawn.
Yeah.
I don't know what to do about that.
That one's fucked up.
But
anyways, he's on that island time.
We sailed that whole afternoon to get to our first spot, kind of a staging spot to where we were going to launch the next day. And that was kind of like my first taste of like the life that we were going to be living for the next couple days. And I'll never forget it. Adam just, I just have it imprinted in my brain, just his physique. He, ripped off his shirt and just dove into the water. And I was like, wow. Like,
whoa.
This is life for the next 2 weeks.
Yeah. No, it was cool. You're like, yeah, I'm going in the water. Yeah, I'm burning up right now. I'm going to go in the water. And we're all like
no hesitation, Adam, just cannonballs into the water. Like, we just parked the boat. What?
Little did we know that's literally what we were going to do every day.
Oh, yeah.
That was going to be our shower every day. It was really pretty nice every day.
You were so nonchalant too about the showering, asking you about it coming into it. What does the showering look like? Yeah, just you just throw some soap on, you jump in the ocean really quick, and rinse off.
Not just any soap.
It's got to be Joy. You have to use Joy because it's like the biodegradable and stuff. Dawn's the same or whatever you use.
Why not Dawn? Like
Dawn's more expensive. Dawn's way more expensive.
They clean penguins with that. Like, is it not better?
Any of that stuff?
What do you have against Dawn?
It's more expensive.
You anti-gold digger?
I like that lemon scent. I don't know what the blue scent is.
I will say the lemon scent got the mullet feeling really
blue
fresh.
raspberry though.
Yeah, but you slather that stuff up and clean off the couple areas you got to clean off, and you're done.
one of the coolest things I thought about the first sailing trip we took was, I mean, we did this multiple times, but the first one we threw on a bunch of burgers on the grill.
Oh,
and the grill is kind of hanging off the back of the boat. And so a little charcoal grill. So we lit it up, grilled some burgers while we're just sailing across the Atlantic or the Caribbean. It's just so cool. We ate lunch there, and I don't know. Those
didn't we toss the boat on autopilot and just ate some lunch and
Drank some beers and just relaxed.
Yep.
Very good. Well, Steven didn't relax. Really.
not for long.
Yeah, well, I mean, I ate my burger, and it went through me.
Yep.
And so part of living on these vessels is you got to get used to one another and not having personal space. And it just, the amenities are small.
Yep.
And there's a certain way you got to do things when you're using the bathroom. You know, you're on a pretty much a floating RV. And so the toilets are a little bit different. And so my burger kind of went straight through me, you know. Normal process, and I had to go. And so I don't know if we showed on the camera, but our little bathroom has like it has that eject button for like when you do a big time number 2, or is it number 1? Is it number 2 or number 1?
It was number 2.
Yeah.
You two'd big time.
It had that number 2 button, the big eject grinder button, and it kicks in another gear, and
you got to turn the motor on and get it up to 1,500 RPMs.
Yeah, and fortunately for me, unfortunately for Steven, but I was the first one to try that function out, and
sent it straight into the holding tanks, and you were.
Yeah, I was down there doing my business. I was like, man, this is kind of nice. We were kind of floating over the sea. I'm like, okay, which button do I press here? Man, that smells bad. And I press that button, and it just shoots it down the hole. I'm like, man. And all of a sudden, I hear, really muffled, like, oh my God. Oh my God. And I come up there, and it's like, it's like a scene of like a war movie where come out of the water and there's like combat going on. Scotty's over here like filming, and
I'm uncontrollably laughing.
Yeah, you're dying laughing. Steven is just hurled over the boat. And what happened was my, it went down the pipe.
He shit himself to an exponential amount, and I couldn't control it.
It went down the pipe, and there has to be some sort of exhaust
there's
valve that blows off every time. And when you're going,
it'd be like if you put liquid into the tank, there's got to be some air go somewhere, right?
Yeah.
I mean, that's
within the air travels a little bit of a scent.
a little bit of a.
So it
Just a hint
did
of
not work
something.
so well with Steven's stomach.
Yeah, it just
I should say your stomach was maybe predispositioned.
Let me just throw my side of the story out there real quick. So the night before, some alcohol had been consumed.
Strange.
Some, quite a bit. And my stomach just wasn't sitting well. I had some Caribs that morning. you would think that the best way to detox is to retox, but in that case it helped the headache, but not the stomach being uneasy. Yeah. And I was like, okay, let me get some food in here, we'll be fine. And we got some nice juicy burgers in there, and it's like it was not sitting well. And I was like 50-50. I was like, okay, maybe we do a little puke and rally here in a bit. And then I just smell this.
Just got a whiff.
I got a whiff of something that was just not holy. like
WMD.
It was a WMD, just some
biological
unholy,
warfare.
Like I'm trying to call up a priest from my diocese back home to get an exorcism on B over here. And that's all she wrote. Because after that, it was over the side of the boat.
All right, let's move on. Maybe the viewers don't want to hear 20 minutes of...
Oh, that's fine. I'm just throwing my side of the story out there. B decided that he was going to elaborate for a minute.
That was
good. Got to clap back.
There you go. So that whole thing happens. We finally get to where we're going to fish. We get the mooring ball all set up, or we're anchored up in the sailboat. We got our 2 dinghies, and we spent. I feel like the first 2-3 days were just kind of a recon mission, just kind of getting a lay of the land, trying to figure out. You had been there before, but it'd been some time. We were trying to figure out the type of water that we should find these fish in, the type of depth and everything. It was like a whole R&D type of process.
Walk us through that. Those days kind of blended together, but like kind of what our schedule would look like. We'd wake up.
Yeah, we would wake up. The sun was rising super early. It was like 5:30 or something. So we'd get up at 5:30 every morning with the sun coming in. GoPro's dead. With the sun coming in, you or I would fire up some coffee, get the percolator going, maybe make a little bit of oatmeal or whatever, get a breakfast rolling, and usually about by 8 or so, 7:38, we kind of start heading out on the dinghies to the flat.
Yep.
And it was like all day. We would get out there. The dinghy ride took us probably, some days were longer than others. And that was a whole thing on its own, the challenge of trying to figure out the best way to get the dinghies there in like an efficient process.
Yeah.
Because we were going into the current and into the wind. So there were big rollers, and the dinghies couldn't get on plane half the time. Like, it was a whole thing.
Yeah.
It's a whole science.
How'd
behind
that
it.
process go for you to dial that in for us?
There's a whole science behind the dinghy. I guess. How do you want to say?
Getting an outboard to cooperate.
Oh yeah, but it's a lot of like weight management as well.
Yes.
And
Can't say that.
yeah, you can.
Yeah, you can.
And of course, we bring a lot of gear because we don't just have fishing gear. We've got the camera gear to film this stuff for you guys. So we've got double the gear that you should have on these boats.
So I remember like the first morning, the first full day, me and Adam and we're on a boat, and then Steve and Scotty were on a boat, and me and Adam unknowingly had the fast dinghy.
Yeah, we didn't know which dinghy was the good dinghy. at the time.
Because none of us were able to break plane that first morning. We were all kind of putting out there, and I was like, I don't know what we did. You shifted your weight or something, and we scooted something, and it's like
Just
we gained
unlocked.
10 to 15 mile an hour, like, and you could see our reaction. We're like, oh my gosh, I had like the head cam on, and we raced out there. But it was every day. It seemed like the dinghies acted different every single day because we had to like move certain packs in other places. It was very dependent on weight.
I remember taking one of the backpack coolers full of beer, ice, and water, or whatever. Literally, holding it over the front of the dinghy for the weight, because that thing was probably 25 to 40 pounds. And when I would hold it over to get all that weight in the front, it was like boom,
It finally
up in plane.
Yeah.
And then we were going.
And we didn't have much of a problem coming back because then we were going with the wind, with the current.
Yeah.
But getting out there was tough for a bit.
Yeah, we were getting sprayed.
Especially till you
Wet,
got a little shallow.
In the mornings, that first bay, those rollers.
But
that
even
dinghy
then, that's part of the issues that we had was that we had to wait for the sun to come up because you could not go too early because you couldn't navigate through the coral and all the flats and the mangroves and all that stuff without being able to see. Yeah. So you had to wait.
I was surprised. There was a lot of objects in that bay that we had to traverse every morning, and I don't think either one of us hit like a solid object. The only thing we hit was like sand.
There was that one really sketchy coral piece that we saw like 2 times coming back.
And it was like
sticking out of the water.
Just out of the water, but like if there were waves, you probably couldn't see it.
Yeah.
Right. Right.
And I remember me seeing it one time and they saw it another time. And it's like right in our path. And we somehow missed it every single time.
Just by the grace of God.
I mean, that it was a proper wrecker. Like it
I
just
just rip your outboard out there.
what?
I'll rip your outboard out there.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, it's crazy.
So that's kind of how the first 3-ish days went.
Yeah. Just dialing it in.
And I think we saw fish the first day. Me and Steve saw some tailors out there.
You and I got on. You and I had legitimate shots.
You
the
also saw
second
some
day.
big bonefish.
Yeah.
Oh,
we did.
yeah.
Yeah. So I guess the first day was more of an afternoon.
Yes.
Me and Steve went out. We saw some tailors. And then second day, I was with Adam, and then they were together. And did y'all see bonefish that day?
We didn't see anything that day. we were kind of driving all over the place, hitting different flats and just trying different water. We tried fishing out of the boat where, Steve would be in the back. We cut the motor, just kind of drift with the current. We tried using the dinghy as kind of like a skiff where we had these paddles and, Steve would be in the back or I'd be in the back, just kind of pointing the boat. And then we'd kind of just drift with the current looking for fish. We were unsuccessful in that.
But we were fishing different water because we were definitely spreading out so that we could find, like, using, since there were enough of us in 2 different groups, you guys went and fished totally different water than what we went and fished that first day, the first full day, so that we could kind of split up to hopefully start dialing it in a little faster.
Yeah, we thought we had it, you and I had it dialed in.
Yeah.
Which was, come to think about it, thinking back on it, it was very insignificant information that we got from what we saw. We were the first ones to really have some shots at bonefish.
Yeah.
And I had the first shot, and Adam had went back to go get the dinghy, and we were walking down this shallow mangrove section. These two were out in kind of the flat areas, more open spaces away from the shore. And we were hitting the mangroves that was close to the shore. And so that was kind of how we divided and conquered. And I didn't get it on film because it happened so quick, but I had 2 very large bonefish roll up to me. And it was chaos because they came in so quick. I threw a fly out there. There were sharks around me. I threw a fly out there, and I was like, oh, man, they're not going to see that. That's too far away. And so I pull it back, and once I pull it back, both of them go over towards the fly. And of course, the fly's out of the water by this point, and they spook.
Classic.
And so I was freaking out because that was my first time to ever see them. Like, me and Steve saw some tails and, bits and pieces, but with the daylight out there, I could see the whole
the
fish.
whole school and the pot. Yeah. And then you see how big they are, and you're like, oh, God.
It does something to you.
It does something to you when you see that school of bonefish, whether they're coming at you or they're moving, left to right to left.
Yeah.
You see them, and it's like, because you're out there in the flats and you're looking, and after a while you're like, am I going to see anything? This is I'm just looking at the freaking water, and there's nothing happening. Because also to mention, there's wind 100% of this trip. There was never a time where it was still. We always had wind.
Yep.
10 to 20 miles an hour wind the entire trip.
Yep.
So that current kind of makes you, you start seeing stuff. You're like, you want to see a bonefish so bad. And so you start seeing rocks that are in the waves, and you're like, that's a fish. And you get up to it, it's just a rock. So when you finally see those fish and you see a school and it's moving, you're like, holy shit. Yeah. And you just, it makes you shake, man. It's the coolest feeling.
Yeah. I think that was a big moment, just for me at least, just to know what I'm working with, like to be like, oh, I've never seen one before. That's what it looks like. And that's what I should be looking for this whole trip. I feel like with any DIY trip where you're sight fishing like that, you've never gone off after a species, like seeing it in the water, you're like, okay, that's what it looks like. And that's
save.
Yeah. Yeah. Command as.
Save
Oh,
as.
Command.
Yeah.
Okay, command save. Not control.
But so leading into the next day, I know Brian and I took a boat together, and then you guys took a boat together, and we kind of split up. And we had walkie-talkies up to this point, but unfortunately, one of them
What happened to that?
I destroyed it.
First day.
got dunked into the water. Not the only thing to get dunked into the water and break in this trip, but we didn't have any communication. This was like day 3 of fishing.
Yep.
We had no communication between boats. The only way we could, communicate was like yelling, or we'd have to go up to the boat or whatever. So Brian and I said we were going to go fish the mangroves up above you guys. Went up there full of mud, and we were like, we're not going to walk in knee-deep mud. So we busted down just below y'all. Didn't know that y'all we're going to be working over that way.
Going ahead and front end us there. High hole us.
The little high hole in.
Yeah.
Whatever. But
Potato.
it wasn't but maybe 5 minutes after we got out of the boat, if even that we saw the biggest school of bonefish that we've ever seen. Like 50 bonefish and their tails just going nuts.
Everywhere.
Yeah.
I heard B got kind of jittery there.
Yeah. Oh, it's total. If you rewind to when I was fishing for the bull trout, earlier this or last year, I guess, I get antsy. I get real antsy when it's like my first time to like try to catch a fish I've never caught before. And I was just losing it. It was like they were spooking everywhere. Like I think maybe a bird flew over them first, and we saw them spook. We're like, "Holy cow, that is all bonefish right there!" Wow. So we did a little stock on them, and I was just losing it. Like, wind was blowing, fly line was going everywhere. I was getting hung and stuff, and it just wasn't working out. And I made several casts, didn't really spook them, but I was a little bit short. So I was like, okay, I'm gonna get it out there. And I freaking just slinged it out there, and of course the line just goes right on a huge school, just goes everywhere. And I feel like that's like the first learning moment when you're going after fish that are as skittish as a bonefish. It's a toss up if you casted a redfish if they're going to spook like that.
Yeah.
But bonefish, like almost
they always will.
99% of the time are going to spook like
Way
that.
more spooky than a redfish.
And I didn't know that. And so, of course, I thought I was just defeated, and I was just like, and then they kept coming back, and I kept having opportunity after opportunity, and I couldn't get it. I don't know what was, I don't know, maybe just
it's called
inexperience.
The Jim leg.
The Jim leg?
Yep.
What is
Jim
that?
leg. You just got legs just started shaking. You just couldn't function right.
Yeah, I needed a break.
Cerebral cortex shut down.
Yeah.
Oh, I was shaking and I was filming. I was like, oh my God, there they are.
Yeah, it was pretty intense. And so, yeah, I actually didn't catch one from that big.
And there was multiple schools. They would break up and you'd have another school come in and they kept coming right at us. And B was making decent casts. Like I thought pretty good casts at some point. And they just, you'd strip it through them and they would just not eat it.
0 out of 50. Those are pretty bad odds.
Yeah, I could see, like I would do a little strip through there and I could see like one or two peel off and come and look at it and then move along. And I don't know what the deal was with the big group. I don't know if we pulled many out of there. I know Steve hooked one maybe later, but like
the next day, yeah.
But like, I don't know what it was. I tried for those fish like all day.
Well, I think something we noticed with the big groups was, if you're casting at a small group, maybe 8 fish, right, and you spook one of them, only 8 of them are the 8 of them are gonna spook away. But if you spook a group of 50, that's like a domino effect, and it triggers all the other fish to be all spooked. So, it's great when you have a lot of opportunities at 50 fish, but you really only have like one opportunity at catching one of them.
Right.
And but you and I stuck with that flat, and I remember that school was coming around, or there was another school or something on that flat, and we just decided to stick it out for most of the day and explore it because there was just miles of flat. And we decided to split up for a little bit. You had a GoPro, I had a GoPro, and we're just like, you know what, let's just split up, see if we can find. And I went kind of north of the school a good ways and started working around and wasn't seeing anything. Like I saw you were casting at a school and just kept kind of working. And then out of nowhere, I feel like a school just showed up. And then another school, and then another school. They were just popping up left and right. And I had shots at like 2 different schools, missed those. And then finally I see this school of probably 8 to 10 fish just like cruising by. And remembered a little tip from my red fishing trips I've been on of leading the fish, and actually made a cast leading the fish, strip, and like boom, they were on. And it was just instant mayhem.
Oh yeah.
Instantly line going everywhere.
It's like a bonefish grenade goes off.
Yeah, I'm screaming like, oh my God, what's happening? And the fish is just gone. It's just
first time you've ever seen your backing not in a fly shop.
Yeah. First time a fish has ever taken me to the backing. But man, it was the coolest thing. Of course, I'd love to experience that with like you guys or next to one of you guys, but it was kind of cool going off on my own and seeing the fish by myself casting at the fish and like hooking it.
Yep.
You know, it just was like, wow, that just happened.
There's all that chaos going on over there, and I see him going like this, and
You just hear me
and
yelling.
stuff like that, and I hear, "Woo!" you know, trying to get my attention. I'm like, oh shoot!
Yeah. You lose control of what you're saying when you hook a fish like that.
Yeah.
You don't know what's gonna come out of the
Yeah.
mouth.
He was barking at me. And
Yeah.
so I couldn't-
It was the coolest thing. Just kept going. B made it over there. We landed the fish, got some photos, released him. And what? It wasn't
5 minutes. 5 minutes.
5 minutes later.
Yeah, another school that just restocked on the flat came right up to us, like from me to this camera right here, like just super close. And
Hey,
it
what are
was-
y'all doing?
Yeah,
What are y'all doing up here?
it was just like
Roll cast.
yeah, just right there, and he took it, and I trout set him, but he still stayed on.
Yeah.
But like you warned us, when you hook a bonefish, there's nothing that you can do at all to stop that first run.
You're just there for it.
Yeah, you just got to hold on and let him do his thing on that first run,
Yeah.
and then you got to catch up.
Yeah. Especially the size fish that we were seeing too. Like, you're not going to turn that fish. You're not going to tell that fish no.
And it's not like the
Like-
drag is super loose either.
No.
They're pulling.
No, they're going.
Yeah.
So
I think
yeah,
we've said
that's
that
cool.
we said it multiple times, but even when they would spook or we'd see a bonefish in the flat, we had never seen a fish that fast.
Yeah,
Yeah.
In the water.
I remember seeing them spook one up when they were getting the dinghy out, and I'm like, is this my mind? Just because I was like looking at a fish and it was like, just I mean, it was gone so fast.
Yeah.
So I think I don't know. Someone in the comments can correct everything I'm about to say, but they're one of the hardest, like pound for pound, one of the hardest fighting fish in the ocean, and they kind of use like their predators are like barracuda and sharks and those kind of things. So their kind of adaptive technique, obviously they're pretty camoed in the water the way that you see them. Like they are pretty hard to see, but really they can outrun just anything else in the water as far as in that short speed bursts off a flat. I mean, obviously they can't outrun a tuna in deep water, but their ability to like be super agile and nimble and be able to like juke a shark and get off a flat is obviously incredible. And I think that's the reason that they're so much fun, and that's the reason that first run is just so incredible.
Yeah.
You're just there.
You're there, lines going everywhere. You're saying who knows what, and it's like I've watched several of our, us videos, GoPro footage of us hooking bonefish, and it's just like, and lines just going everywhere.
Yep. Yep.
Gosh,
That's why they're so much fun.
So
But that was so great when you caught that first one. It was so cool being right next to you, and we were both watching these fish get closer and closer. And you're like, when are they just gonna spook?
Yeah.
And then one of them hammered the fly, and I remember you hooked him, and for a second he didn't really know what was happening, and he was kind of
That's
he was
a
like
spicy shrimp.
stable right there. But you see he was hooked, and then took off.
Yeah.
yeah,
And
he's
the fight was on.
Oh, I'm hooked.
Oh shit.
Yeah.
Oh shit.
But that was
Yep.
that was a really cool moment that day, and
Yeah.
you and I ended up sticking around the flat, poking around even more.
Yeah.
We both hooked another fish. And
Yeah.
It was
Yeah, had
Epic.
several more chances at other fish. You caught a totally new species. I don't even know what that was called.
they called it a blue runner,
Blue
but I
runner.
don't know.
Type
know
of
what-
jack from what
Yeah.
Yeah.
he was saying.
Oh yeah.
But for some reason, he was on the flat.
And he was with a school bonefish.
Yeah.
Because there was a huge school bonefish coming right towards me.
Mistaken identity.
Yeah. And it was one of those where they were getting so close. Like they would swim away and then they would start coming towards me. And I was like ducking down and making a small little roll cast and just waiting. Strip, strip, strip. Boom. Got one to eat.
He fought pretty good too.
Yeah. Oh, he made a good
Yeah.
run. Didn't take me in my backing, but he took line and everything.
Yeah. That's cool.
But yeah, the morale was really high after
Yeah,
that
for
day.
sure.
But I feel like just kind of keep it going too on the facts is that so we obviously that was we were all extremely hyped up that we'd found like this flat that had a bunch of good fish on it. But then I feel like we also did a pretty good job of like, okay, what did we do? What was the tide? Like we did our normal kind of thing. Like we took notes off of that. Like, okay, it was like we got back. We were like, all right, what time did we catch those fish? Let's look at a tide chart to see what was the tide when we caught that fish. What did it eat? What were they doing? And, kind of, I feel like really helped us start really putting a puzzle piece together. It's like, all right, here's what's happening. And here's where we found fish. Here's when we found them. As far as time of day, as far as tides, here's what we did, and this is what worked.
Yeah.
You do it once. Like, I mean, I'm not saying it's that easy, but if you can kind of do that once, you're probably going to continue being relatively successful at it.
Yeah.
For the rest of your trip.
For sure.
Well, I think one of the things is we didn't realize the tide would have much impact because going into it, from your experience, you're like, oh, whatever, the tide's not that big of a deal. And when you're fishing in South Carolina coast, the tide is everything. Yeah. Right. And so we didn't really realize until maybe day 3 or 4 that, oh, wow, the water did come down a lot. Yeah. This is low tide. Yeah. And we started to kind of piece together where we should be when the tide was where it was.
I mean, obviously the tide there is what, like 8 feet? Like that's
very visible. Very different.
Yeah. But I mean, here, a few inches.
For a bonefish flat.
For a bonefish flat. But a few inches, you're like, if you've never been there before, you're like, okay, I don't know. Is this high? Is this low? Like, what is this? And in the past, obviously the fisheries changed a little bit, but I don't know if the flats were just a little more consistent. They were just a different depth, better depths or whatever. But the flat just really hadn't mattered a ton when the tide had not really mattered a ton when I'd been there. But it obviously was mattering a ton for these fish.
Mm-hmm. Yep. So we rounded out the rest of that day, and I caught another one there towards the end, and we called her a day. High hopes. We took that intel, and then we
threw it out the window.
Yeah.
Into the ocean.
No, we took that intel and we came into the next day and approached the next day with what we had learned. And it still wasn't as easy as we thought.
Yeah. It wasn't. I mean, so Steve and I rolled up. So Steven still had, so you guys had caught one. I'd caught one previously. So now we
you hadn't caught one though.
Well, not on this trip. Yeah. But at least I'd caught a bonefish before. Steven is the only one of us then at this point who had never caught a bonefish. So we roll up onto that flat. First thing, Steve and I ended up having the faster boat that morning. Beat y'all there. We get to that flat. And I mean, we had not nearly gotten out of the boat when Steven and I see that school of 50.
Anchor hadn't even set at that point.
Right. We're like, had cut the motor. We were kind of coasting in. And I was like, there they are. And so we kind of get our stuff together. We get going. I mean, of course, it's hard to see a school of 8. You can see that school of 50. Mm-hmm. Tails are just it looks like a hurricane out in the water.
Water is going crazy.
And so we kind of walk up to them. We start getting set. Steve makes one cast. I don't know what happened. It just didn't connect on that one. But then they kind of circled around and were coming straight at us.
They did something weird. I tried to lead them and they just cut off the wrong way.
That happens. And very next cast, I mean, you landed it perfect. Fish are coming this way. Eats immediately. I don't know what happened, but it broke off.
I got a good set on it. The problem was I had a big old thing of seaweed that was on my line there. And so when it started running at me, I just lost pressure on it. Because even with me backing up and trying to reel in on it, that seaweed would just drop in my line right there. That's the story I'm going with.
Yep. I like it.
That's your reality.
That's my reality. That's my perception of reality, at least. And it was just gone after that.
I like it.
And from there,
and I cried.
From there, we entered the time.
There it started.
The time portal, where the days just fused together.
Steve hooking and losing fish, just coming and going.
We've joked about it in the past, and the fish gods maybe have heard, and they made it a real.
They think it's as funny as we do.
I blame you guys then.
They made it a real reality.
I blame you guys.
It's
instigating this karma.
It seriously was I'm not joking on Steve. We went through like 4 days there.
Yeah.
Where it was the same thing, us running, exploring, finding new flats, finding new bonefish, and, you know, bathing in the sea, cooking, making sandwiches on the dinghies. I mean, it was like, that was kind of the middle chunk of our trip.
Yep.
Was just like, that was just us doing our time, putting in our time. And
Yep.
a lot of days had passed and we hadn't even noticed. Like, I mean, they went by like that.
Yeah.
And they were gone. And like we had kind of, I feel like towards the end of those like 3 or 4 days, like kind of ran out of our honey hole. Like there was that big group, but they weren't as responsive as when we first found them.
Yeah.
Yeah, and we came to find out there was obviously the flat, and then it dropped off into deeper water. So there was fish, you know, coming in and out on that flat. But even though we had seen them there, didn't mean that they were going to be there the next day. And so we had, like you're saying, we had a couple of days we were fishing that same flat, trying to find them, and we just couldn't find them.
Yeah, they disappeared. We're like, well, crap. Like, what are we gonna do?
Yeah, what are we going to do?
So,
And then we went through a little phase of really trying to get you on some fish, Steve. And because we had all caught our fish, we were fired up. I mean, Adam hadn't caught one on this trip yet, but we were really trying to get you on that first bonefish. And you had so many shots, but for whatever reason, it just wasn't connecting.
Just bad karma. Broke off on the first one. That was an experience. Second one, just got unlucky with the seaweed. Next one, I just lost pressure on it. The one after that, I'm pretty sure got hooked around some coral. And I mean, we're starting to get ahead of the story at that point. But like, it was just one thing after another. Just inexperienced, unlucky, just not paying it correctly, and then just again getting unlucky on coral. It just some things you can't help. It's hard. You got to admit it, though. You know, it just is what it is for those things.
so Steve was like the focus there for a second to like, okay, he needs the best shots to get his bonefish out of the way. Check that box, and then we'll go on from there. You know, for the video. And we're like, okay, we heard some rumblings on the island of maybe a different flat. And this kind of sets up the rest of the trip right here. We heard some sort of grumblings, had some sort of expectation that there maybe was another flat that we didn't see or that we didn't really pay much attention to. And so we're like, okay, same day, make coffee, breakfast, we run out, you know, same route, looking for the same fish. Those 50 fish weren't there. We're like, oh, well, crap.
Yeah, I don't know if we'd pressured them too much, or
Probably.
if they were just like, man, that idiot is up there on that flat again today, trying to hooking us. And
Look at these guys rolling up again in their two
here
little
they
dinghies.
The
like,
guy
I
with
don't
that
know-
beard.
yeah, I think they knew at that point.
So we were all out of options at this point. We had been to the same sand flat, and our fish weren't there. They were nowhere to be found. And we didn't really know what to do because that was the biggest concentration that we had found to that point.
Yep.
And we didn't know that we wouldn't see a bigger concentration than that,
No.
you know, the rest of the trip. But we heard some grumblings about maybe another flat just around the way, you know, little ways over from where we were. And we had kind of suspected it.
Looked at it
And-
on Google Maps.
Yeah, and we're like, we looked at it on the maps. We were like,
it's kind of hard to tell.
yeah, we were like, what is that? Like, what kind of bottom is that? Like, is it a sand flat? Or?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, there's a lot of different. It's kind of can be really hard to tell on Google because you've got like, okay, is it sand? Is it kind of grassy? Is it like coral? How deep is it? What tide is this at? Like,
Yeah.
you know, all of those things kind of add up to try to really make it difficult.
Yeah.
Without putting your eyes on it.
Yeah, and so we were focused on Steve catching a bonefish, and we hopped up on that flat, and we motored over to this thing, and it was a shallow little shelf, and I guess the tide was pushing in at that point, and we had anchored up. We hadn't walked 5 feet before we had.
So we essentially spread out on the flat, and I saw a school of like 6 come right in between me and you. I was like,
That's weird.
Like we had just motored up. We had just gotten out of the boat. You know, you kind of like get in this mental thing where you're like, all right, I got to grind it out here for a bit before we start seeing some fish. No. We get up on that flat and here come a school of 6 bonefish between me and Scotty, spooked. The sun was not
no,
in
terrible
our,
sun.
Yeah, in our favor. The way the waves and the wind and the fish were coming with the sun, it just didn't work. But I was like, oh crap, we're already in them. I mean, like it happened fast.
Yeah. And then there was another group 5 feet behind them that you and Steve kind of took this one route. And I guess you just had the better shot. I don't know what.
I think I just said sorry, Steve. you had a couple chances. I was starting to get a little tired of guiding. I don't know what all happened.
I can say a lot of things right now, but I won't.
Okay, that's fair. I don't know what happened.
Steve doesn't want to relive this.
I don't know what happened either, but I was like,
You high-hold me.
I high-hold you, and I was like, it's a good shot. It's a great shot. It's a big fish.
And talk about it. What happened?
So the fish
He
was
fried
coming.
me. That's what he did.
Yeah.
But besides that,
Besides me, Front and Steve, the fish was coming. My fly line was just going. No, it was textbook. So we found this new flat. All immediately we're seeing fish. We were up on the flat. We had all just gotten out of the boats. We were all going to kind of fish together. Or you guys were filming, and then me and Steve had the rods, and you guys were going to get some content of, you know, kind of new flat, little bit of a new area. And everything was kind of textbook for that fish. I mean, we saw the tails. It was a school of, I don't know, 6 maybe, 6 to 8. Saw the school, saw some tails coming. Really couldn't see the fish that well, but definitely could see the tails and kind of the school. And they were headed straight towards us. It was a pretty easy cast. I don't know, my second or third cast. Ended up hooking up on one and had quite a bit of excitement because that flat was very different because it was mangroves on one side of the island. Pretty long as far as like length along the island, but very short as far as between the island and the drop off of this little reef that we were on. And so we were kind of like, all right, where's this fish going to go? Like, is it going to drop off into these coral heads? Is it going to run up into these mangroves? Or is it going to try to fight up and down the reef and on the flat? So anyways, I kind of hooked this fish immediately. You know, I'm in my backing, and the fish is taking off, and I'm trying to get up on it, and I see the fish running off the reef, which there's a ton of big coral heads right in there, and I don't know. I was like, if that fish gets off that reef, that's gone.
You're done.
I was gone. So I'm running, trying to like make a bunch of noise and trying to kind of head this fish off on the reef side.
I've never seen you move so fast in my life.
I can be
It was
speedy when I want
impressive,
to.
yeah. Some knees to chest right there.
So I was booking it of this flat, kind of right in between on the edge of the flat. And all of a sudden, that fish turns and heads straight into the mangroves. I was like, oh no, I'm done. I'm so done. And I don't know how it kind of went around a mangrove, and I guess there was a piece of seaweed there. It brought that piece of seaweed with it. But it was after, I guess I made it through that first run that we were talking about, and then the rest of it was okay. And Bryant grabbed the fish for me, and I hadn't even noticed, but there was a group of tourists in a boat right behind us that were going out on a reef fishing day. And again, we were kind of sitting right at the edge of this like reef. And I turn around and there's cheering. And
He had an audience.
I had an audience, these tourists and these with their guide. I don't know, there's 4 people or something on
Like
this boat.
6 or 8 there. You got quite
6
the
or 8.
crowd, yeah.
And they were like, woo!
Mom had the camera out.
Yeah. So if you're watching that, I'd love to have my picture that you took. But anyway, so I had a little audience there for my first fish. I don't know, kind of what you said. I feel like it was the polar opposite of yours. Kind of going off by yourself and hooking up. Like I was not with just us, but another group of 6 tourists on the boat plus their guides, and watching what we were up to. So
I thought it was really cool that we were all right there, though.
Yeah.
and watching,
That was-
watching it unfold. I was filming, and so I was like focused on making sure stuff was in focus, getting framed or whatever. I wasn't really watching the fish, but then Steve's right next to you, like telling you, seeing the fish. Hey, tick, tick, tick. Brian's right behind, watching the whole thing unfold. Like it was really cool that we were all there. And then right when you hooked it, it was just absolute mayhem. You were running. Brian and I were
took
just
off.
geeking out, like, oh my god, fish on, and ended up landing it.
yeah,
And it was a toad.
It was a good one. It was a good fish.
Is there personal best?
That was probably my personal best.
Being very modest about it.
I would say it was probably my personal best, but I would definitely say it's probably one other than I guess maybe my first bonefish. It was certainly will probably be my most memorable bonefish. You guys and
Oh.
Anyways, I would definitely say it was maybe one of my most memorable ones for how much of a grind and an effort we put into it. And no, it was really cool to be able to like it. It was awesome that it was like textbook. It was a brand new flat that also worked out. So I think the vibes were high. We were all pretty dang jazzed to be like, all right, we're on to something else here. Our old flat that we had, I think we just fished it out. Our new flat is now the old flat. I don't know if these are the same fish. It's not that far from each other. It's not it's not a crazy thought to think some of those are the same fish that cycle between those two flats or whatever. And I don't know. I think we were just really hyped that we found a new spot.
Yeah.
Wasn't that the first bonefish you caught on a bonefish fly you designed yourself and tied yourself? Yeah.
Yeah, I'd caught some
How'd that
bonefish
feel?
on fish or on flies that I had tied, but that was the first bonefish that I caught on a fly I designed, and so that was fun. I liked doing that.
It's very rewarding, isn't it?
Yeah, it is.
It's like the whole full circle thing.
Yeah, I think because you casted a fish or something. What? Because we put that fly on for a reason.
The very first fish that I hooked into and lost that day that you and Scotty both caught yours was on that crab.
Yes, but then you broke off a different fly, not that crab. But then you must have cast it. I did give you first shot on that flat, and you ended up getting a rejection. I think. No. Yeah, I know we put that fly on because you got a rejection on a shrimp.
Yes, that was after the one that you caught. So
Okay.
to continue on from what Adam was saying there, after he hooked that one, it was back to me hogging all the airtime apparently because I couldn't catch a fish.
Well,
Sorry.
yeah, because
so
then-
I could
then we had-
hook them, I just could not land them.
You hooked way more fish than all of us.
Well, y'all put me in front of them more times than you
Yes.
guys, so I should have. If I hadn't, that would have been embarrassing.
I'm embarrassed.
I'm embarrassed for you. Anywho, so Adam and I are sitting there, and I'm putting Adam was on me about practicing before this, and I did, and I was putting the shots on these fish, leading them perfectly, a good 1.5 to 2 feet ahead of them on the lane that they were going to, and the shrimp pattern that we were using, they just weren't. And after everything was probably the fourth or fifth rejection, where the school would just go over it, not even just caring about me, just slow strip, slow strip, slow strip. We kind of was okay, had a come to Jesus moment. We're well, we see a lot of crabs here. They hit a crab pattern earlier. Let's try this new crab pattern we're working with. Put it on there. Next tool that came up,
Yep.
absolutely murdered it.
Yeah, that
And
fish
then I hooked up some core and it was gone.
Yeah, that fish
Some
was
things happened and I lost the fish.
that fish was textbook too. It was a big
yeah?
school. It was not a big school. It was a school of big fish,
Mm-hmm.
circled in. It was a perfect cast from Steven. I don't think you were doing anything wrong by this point at all. I think it was just
I think the only thing I could say was my hook set, and I get that I have to have a subtle hook set with this, but I'm not dialed into that, and I feel like it might have been a little bit too soft in that sense.
Yeah, could have
because
been.
I came unbuttoned easier than I felt like I should have come unbuttoned on that.
yeah.
Because I never got real actual a release on the pressure. I had pressure for the majority of the fight after the first run,
Right.
and everything, but at the same time, it's it just popped the minute I kind of had semi-pressure on it. So I think
Yeah.
my hook set probably could have been a little bit tighter. But again, that's the whole point of this experience.
Yeah.
Is trying to dial it in myself.
Takes a lot of time, and you got to have the shots, and
Got to miss a lot of fish to catch some fish. Apparently,
yep, you got to learn.
There
But
you
they were textbook shots and eats. They were obviously liking what we were throwing. We were finding fish. Steve was doing all the hard part, just didn't get to do the fun part of the whole thing. So
Unfortunately, so.
it was awesome to see that fish, kind of almost peel off a little bit. And I feel like you can see when they're just muddling, spuddling around. And then all of a sudden you just see that one that's like, oh, hold up. Oh,
I'm gonna eat that.
you see that tail, and he kind of gets that tail with a kick where he's like,
Just like 90 degrees
yeah,
straight on
he's
it.
just
It's the best.
right around like your area and your 3D in your mind area of where your fly would be, and he just goes,
And you're like, that's my fly.
yeah,
He's
that's
on
my fly.
And it's so cool.
No doubt.
It's so good, rewarding to feel that when it's not a rock or a piece of coral. Because I had plenty of times where I think the fly I was using was too heavy, where I'd be stripping in front of a group and it would get caught in a piece of coral,
Yeah,
and then it spook. I'm like,
Well,
damn
so
it.
the opposite of that is like the very first bonefish I hooked that second day or third day. Sorry, I thought it was like some coral, some grass I was hooked in. So like I did what Adam told me, a nice little subtle strip,
hit grass.
hit grass. And I was like, oh, it's grass. Let me do like a
I wa-
strip set just in case.
I watched the fish eat Steve's fly.
I didn't see that because I could not see anything at that point. You have to have a trained eye for this, and it takes a while to get a trained eye for that. What I've learned, but yeah. So the next thing I'm like, oh, okay, let me do like a very subtle strip set, just very subtle, just to make sure okay, if it's on grass, it'll pop off. If it's not, I got the fish.
She's gone.
No, it was the fish. There was no fly left. All I had was a broken no slip mono
Yep.
loop.
I was like, oh, Steve. Like,
Steve,
because
no.
It took me a few minutes to realize what happened too, and once I realized what happened, some very strong words were said. Thankfully, the GoPro was turned off.
None of which will make the film.
yeah,
not at all.
It can be really tough to know. Like, all right, is that grass? Like, it definitely if you got a school kind of coming at you, and we were fishing flies that were supposed to sit on the bottom, like just like a crab would. It's not going to be floating in the water column. So we're trying to fish like the lightest weight crab that we really could, and bouncing it. And obviously, you're going to grab grass or coral. And there's so many times I was like, all right, here's a school, good a cast. Oh, it's grass. Okay, hold up.
Yeah,
That's coral. Okay.
Dude, I just remember y'all on that flat after you had caught your fish. You and Steve went out and trying to get Steve on one, and I remember you guys just start running along the reef line.
Yep.
What happened there? Because I was filming and I was pretty far back, and I was trying to keep up, but I was still really far back. But what happened there?
So we're in between seasons for men's league soccer in Huntsville, Alabama.
Oh my
Hassle.
God. Nope.
And,
Turn that off.
So I'm trying to work on my endurance on.
Steve,
That's good.
Steven's a field fairy. So,
All right, we'll back up on that one.
so as I just said, this was like right after I caught my fish. The fish, the way the kind of the wind, the current, and the sun did not line up in the afternoon on that flat, right? So the fish wanted to come at you, but the sun was at your back this way, kind of shining straight on the fish. So it was really hard to get a hold of where to go. So anyways, or maybe I'm the other way. Anyways, these fish were all working away from us.
It was I can think it was like the flow of the flat essentially. They wanted to start at the bottom.
Yes.
Towards the mangroves, and they like to flow up towards the north side of the flats.
Yeah.
And they just, I don't know what it was about it with the current or what it was, but every time that we saw a group, that's the way they went.
Yeah.
They would kind of run up to this fat area. They would circle that for a couple times
Yeah.
and then just push off the north end of it.
So I don't know if Steve and I had gotten into, I don't know where this group came from. Maybe they came from further in, or maybe we just kind of came up behind them. But there was a group of fish that we've ended up getting behind, where we had to figure out how to get in front of these fish to get a shot. And they're moving just fast enough that you can't, you're never going to walk
Just
to get up there.
Just slightly faster than your walking speed.
Right. Because they're kind of muddling around, but they're, moving, obviously, to an area. And so the way those waves would hit that flat, we could run up the side of that flat without them hearing us because of those waves coming in. So we kind of cut out way far, ran through the surf, and then would cut back in to get Steve a shot. And then we did that 2 or 3 times to get shots at that same school. So you get 1, maybe 2 shots as they were coming up. Okay, there it is, cast. we were coming at them, directly, and pulling it straight away from them, or perpendicular to the fish, and maybe get one cast. All right, they passed. All right, let's book it back up. Get to the next, get to the next spot. Get the fly ready. Wait for them. Get the cast. And then, maybe 2 shots there. Then just try it again. I don't think you hooked one of those, did you?
So that was when we realized the shrimp pattern wasn't working, because I had 3 shots at that school right
That's
there. Like
it.
3 really good shots, great casts ahead of them, strip as they're coming over it, and they didn't get spooked by it or anything.
Yeah.
But they just were not having anything to do with the shrimp pattern. And then finally another school pulled up, got a good cast in front of that other school.
8. First shot.
No, that was nothing on the shrimp pattern. That's when we switched over to the crab pattern.
The first shot on the crab pattern when we did switch, you hooked up immediately.
Oh, yeah, immediately. And that's when we realized, okay, they're up here, they're chasing crabs, they're not looking for shrimp pattern.
I think we were using we were using the shrimp because it had lighter weight eyes.
As well as we were also fishing the sand flat ahead of time.
We were.
Which is more shrimpier.
And I was still relatively confident in that shrimp pattern because of how light it was. I thought that was going to be better for how shallow that water was, and how snaggy the bottom was.
But it didn't match the hatch.
But I didn't think it would matter as much as it did. And that crab pattern just...
Every time, if you got it in front of them without spooking them, they were on it.
Yeah.
I just couldn't land them.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, man, and that just started the chronicles of Steve trying to catch his first bone, which was
that's
much
what we should call this series.
Yeah.
Oh, we got some epic takes.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, dude. And it was like everyone, I'd be looking through the camera, see you hook up, and you can even hear Brian and I like, oh, let's go. And then comes unbuttoned. And
I feel like I took it relatively okay for the first few. Like
you did.
I was just calm.
You kept your cool.
Okay, cool. Like, hey guys, like, this is my first time doing this. What should I do better? Like, you just got unlucky there. Just keep at it. Maybe try this. So let me try that. And then it just doesn't happen. Then finally, I mean, it's probably the 7th or 8th one that I hooked there, and I just absolutely just could not fucking handle it anymore.
At a point,
I just took that entire rod and just sent it into the surf because I was just over it. I was like, I'm done. I was actually done, but I was just so frustrated at that point. I was like, I had to vent somehow or the other.
Good.
You were at a low point there.
Yeah.
I was. Like I've done in my mind everything right that I should have on these fish. I've done it time and time again, and just could not land one.
Did you think you were gonna?
Oh no, there were several times that I was just like, I just won't catch a bonefish on this trip. I just not gonna happen. Like we're here at day. I have 3 days left. I have 2 days left. I'm just not gonna catch one. Like every time I hook into one, I just lose it. Like something, an act of God, some seaweed bumps in there. I don't know what happens. It's just gone. And like there's one time, like it was right before I finally landed mine, and like I hooked one, I think it was the same school that I finally landed that one from. But I hooked one, and like I had a great hook set. I did everything correct, and lost it. It hit me on my backing and just lost it. I look at B and I'm just like, B, like I'm open to constructive criticism. I'm always open to constructive criticism. Tell me what I did wrong. And he just looks at me and I was like, nothing.
I had no idea.
I think we could tell. I mean, Adam and I watched one of the last ones you missed from afar from the dinghy, but we could tell it was like with each fish that you missed, it just was a little more frustration until you finally were just. I remember you threw that rod in the water and you just like. You probably just like, what the heck?
Yeah. I wasn't done with it, but I was just like, I had to vent somehow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, and I was just like, nope. I took a few minutes, had some woosah moments, picked it up, let that pod reset, and finally it ate, and I was on that. I was on that fish.
Yeah.
I'm still very new at like sighting these fish, and so I could see their bodies moving, but I just misunderstood, missaw, whatever you want to say about it. But I didn't realize that the fish that I saw that I thought was the front of the pack was not the front of the pack. There were some fish in front of that. All right, so I was like very concerned that I was actually going to line these fish. And so when I made my cast at them, it was a little bit too tight. Might not have been the best cast, but I was trying to get a good tight cast on them, about a foot and a half out from them. But as I made that cast, I had that like gun shy moment in my head. I was like, oh God, I just did not have enough faith in myself to think that was the front of the school. And I was like, I just lined the front of the school again for the 3rd time in a row. Like these fish are about to scoot. but nothing. And I was just like, oh my gosh, did I actually make the correct cast? Like I've made a bunch of good casts, but I was like, did I actually like do this correctly? Because I had screwed up the last few. I was like, sweet. All right, cool. Strip. And the next thing you know, I just see that tail just go ass up on that fly. And I was like, that's my fly. Little pop like that. I was like, that's not seaweed. That's a fish. Hit that pressure. Put my rod down. He took it. Put pressure on him. I said, no, I'm just sprinting after this fish. What did I say? I was like, not today, motherfucker. Just chasing after it because I finally, in my head and in my heart, I felt like this is it. This is that fish. Like I've had so many missed opportunities. I've missed so many fish so far. Maybe not even missed, like hooked so many fish and not being able to bring it home. But I like after getting that hook, getting that run and being able to chase after that and that pressure I had on it, I was like, this is it. This is the fish. This is what it's all been working for. I was like, I'm going to land this fish. Like, on God, I'm landing this fish right now. And B's in the background just eating it up. And I see Scoot and Adam off the background just like, thank God he's finally caught a fish and can land it.
Yeah, 'cause meanwhile, Adam and I are 80 yards behind you down the flat, kind of just like working up towards you, towards you and B. And we see you miss one, and then we see you hook up. And Adam and I are just like, let's go. Just shouting and screaming.
At least in your defense, you did also hook a fish that came unbuttoned. I mean, it obviously happens. It's not, I mean, I don't know if it happens as much as it does to anybody else that does Steve, but it obviously happens.
Back to my defense, this is the second saltwater experience I've ever had in my life.
Yep.
The first one
was 2 weeks ago,
which you really couldn't count as much because of the weather. Kind of just screwed us over at every point.
Oh yeah, it was bad.
So it's like the first real saltwater experience I ever had. Completely different from your trout fishing, your bass fishing, the whole state of mind, the whole way you're fishing for them. You know, the whole stalking them and trying to look for them. Like for the first 5 or 6 days, I think it was, I'd be walking next to you guys, but there's a fish right there, nervous water, tail. I'm like,
what?
Do what now? Do what? I see a light spot there. No, not there. Over there. Like,
That looks like
20
water.
yards past that.
you sure? Okay.
That looks like water.
And like, so it took me a while to start getting that. And I'm still not good at it, but it's just one of those things. Like, there's a very huge learning curve on that whole being able to spot them out there on the flat.
Yeah.
That I just think it's very underrated that people don't understand.
All that is just time, I think, in between. I mean, how different do you think it is, like spotting a redfish versus spotting a bonefish?
It wasn't that different, I feel like.
Once you kind of know what to look for, I mean, I would say it was not that it's that bad of a thing, but you'd see some nervous water, be like, oh, here's some nervous water. You might get up and get ready, and it's like a box fish. And you're like, okay, whatever.
Yeah.
There were
bait
some
pushing.
units- There were some units of box fish.
Yeah,
in
we saw
that,
some big box fish, but like I think that like being able to spot them just takes the time, and other than time on the water, I don't really know what more. I mean, do you know of any other way, or do you guys know of any other way? If you know of another way, leave it in the comments. But like, how could you get better at
Please
that?
let me know. I need help.
Oh, by a ladder, and just
You could stand on a ladder,
on the flat.
right? You
This
could
isn't Pyramid Lake.
you could stand on a skiff polling platform.
Well, I said this in the
Like-
last episode that we recorded, but I think it's something to reinforce. But I think when you get out there, one thing that really helped me was instead of always moving, just standing in one place, especially when it felt really fishy, or maybe you saw a school in the a ways away, just standing there and just looking around and scanning. Because when you're moving, that current is also you're moving with it, right? And you're not 100% on that spot, so it might look like something's moving, but if you actually stop, you can see the fish come in and like let stuff come in and happen. And so I think that's how I end up catching my fish and seeing a lot of fish, was just standing there and waiting for it to happen. So I think that's probably a great way, if you aren't seeing fish, is just slow down, take a rest, kind of scan around, spend 5 minutes looking around. Like, that's okay. And maybe something will pop in. Maybe won't. But how did it feel when you finally got that fish up, landed it, you and B got to celebrate? What was going through your head?
We had to fight it for a second because it was close to not, like, I know we said it was going to happen. You're like, not today. But it still had a few more runs. Like we said, there's not a whole lot you can do in those first couple surges. And we had to kind of corral it into a sandy area.
Yeah, because we were sitting on the edge of the coral and the sand flat there, walking that seam there, and we hooked him on that sand flat. And, that was, I'm walking one way, B's walking the other way, just trying to keep him on that sandy spot because, if he gets in that coral stuff and he drops over the edge, we're breaking off on him. Thankfully, there were no mangroves there, so we were able to actually have a better corral than what Adam had to deal with on his first fish there. But it was some work. Like, we had to get on him, and you'll watch that replay there. And I'm like, after he starts slowing down and he's not making those runs into my back anymore, I actually start smallmouth fishing him. He makes a run this way. I'm like, nope, this way. I just start putting the opposite pressure on him because I was like, well, he's tired at this point. Like, we just need to put the opposite pressure on him.
Yep.
I don't know if that's right or not, but he was done with his runs, and we just needed to fight him and just keep him in that sandy flat. And B, thank you so much for helping me out with that because we corralled him, we got him down there, and he hooked him up.
Yep.
You had it in your arms.
It's perfect.
It was a perfect moment. What we had came for was finally complete.
Yep.
That was it.
This
all
is
she
so
wrote.
sick.
It was so awesome.
Yeah, Adam and I wish we were up there, but we were from afar, like just getting. We were so pumped.
Oh, yeah.
But meanwhile, while you were fighting this fish and landing it, I had like 4 or 5 shots working up towards your dinghy at schools of fish, and I think my experience was kind of the opposite of yours. My very first couple shots at fish, I hooked up. Like I had one really good shot, hooked up, landed it. So I had all this confidence. Then I was like, oh, dude, like this bonefish stuff, I got it figured out, blah, blah, blah. And then I'm working up this flat while you're fishing and catching your first one. And I'm missing shot after shot, spooking. I probably spooked 6 schools working up towards you, including the 2 biggest bonefish I've ever seen in my life that spooked off of this reef. And I had a shot at them. They spooked, but they were so big. Their backs were out of the water. Their tail, I thought it was a shark initially because it was so big. But, I mean, it was like classic fly fishing, humbling you.
Yeah, I had so many shots in that area where I would just be able, I would get, I couldn't see fish at all, actually in the water at all. I was only casting at tails. So you'd see some tails coming through. You'd see those tails kind of coming down the flat. You could watch them. All right, there's the tail. There's a tail. There's a tail. You'd finally see one that's kind of rooting around almost like a redfish would, just stop and just digging and get that cast. And without fail, for like the rest of my time there, it was lining a fish that I couldn't see in front of the fish that was tailing. Made what I thought was a perfectly fine cast. There's no way that fish that was tailing was the one that spooked. Made a great cast there. There was always another fish in there that I just couldn't see.
And to your point there, I think that was one of the big learning curves that we had to work with was understanding how we should approach these flats with the light.
Yep.
Because, I had the same experience when Scoot and I were fishing that flat just ourselves. Like, I was walking up that flat there, and it was a neutral light, so you had really not that great vision forward or backwards. But just walking up there, I walked within like 10 feet of a school and just spooked them. Yeah. Never saw them. No nervous water, no tails, nothing. And then probably 10 or 15 feet past that, Scoot legitimately drops the drone down to like get like a close up of me. 8 feet off the edge, literally on the edge of the reef. A school of 10 just spooks. Yeah. And I about had a heart attack. And we have it on GoPro. It's me. I just turn around. I was like, oh my gosh, what is going on here? Because he drops the drone down, and I hear the drone come down. And the next thing I know, it's like, the school just spooks off the side of the flat there. I'm like, what's going on here? And it's just like, that's one of those things, like, I don't want to say the lack of an experience, but that's the whole part of that do-yourself culture with this is like, we had to get out there. We had to understand, okay, when we have this flat on this side of the island, we have to be aware that the sun's coming from here or from here with the tide going in or out. And, just being able to make those assumptions and figure out where we should approach it was truly humbling because we got it wrong more than we got it right. And yet we still got on fish, which is, think is amazing.
And I think a lot of the trouble we started having there at the end in the last few days was the tide didn't match the time of day. It was obviously a little better in the morning. It was obviously a little better on the incoming tide. And then we just started kind of going downhill the past few days of the trip where the tide charts were not aligned properly. where it was a high tide super early in the morning, coming down into a low tide. So all morning, tide dropping, fish moving off the flats to, 2 o'clock, where then finally you get to hit that incoming tide for the day. And then the light is just totally blown for the last part of the day. The way that this specific flat was arranged with, where it was on the island and where the wind hit it and where the sun hit it. We didn't have that many places we could go fish here. So we had 100 different flats we could pick from. So we were really kind of stuck. All right, well, we know where the fish are going to be. Let's see what we can figure out. In the last few days, even at the last area we went to, you just weren't able to do it very well with the way the fish were coming and the way the light was. Just didn't work.
Yeah. And we got to sail around and explore some other flats, some other islands, which was really cool. And we saw some fish, but never had luck, like we did where we were fishing and where we caught our fish. I remember one of the nights we popped out and we get out there and we're like, oh, water's way too deep. This brand new flat, brand new location. And out of nowhere, again, within 3 minutes of being away from the boat, we see a massive permit tail. Couldn't believe it that it was a permit. And I still don't really get the whole hype around permit yet because I just haven't gone for permit. Don't. No, I know. It's like heroin. It'll ruin you. But these guys gave me a shot at, hey, go cast at it. And I was shaking. Holy crap, that's a huge permit. Made one pretty solid shot, I thought. He kind of just swam away from it, of course, permit.
Like permit do.
Like permit do.
Oh, so it was a permit. That was not mistaken identity then.
Didn't have any interest in the fly. So I switched rods. I grabbed the crab pattern. I saw him kind of working out towards the surf a little more. Get out there. Was about to make another shot. I really thought I was close to him. And out of nowhere, he's just gone.
Yeah. That was a permit.
Isn't that why you say that permit's Spanish for disappointment?
Yeah.
Yeah. Sounds about right.
But that was, up until that point, we never really even had a shot at permit. And that was oh my gosh.
Yeah.
That was crazy. But, that definitely struck a chord in me. And
Scoot's got some PTSD from that because he hasn't stopped talking about it.
I haven't. I've said probably the same thing every day.
Yeah, which is fine. You won't. We just we need to get you some help.
I know. I need some help.
If y'all know a good permit therapist, I'd love.
Adam needs it.
I need one as well. It'd be great if you could get me figured out how to get me off that stuff.
Yeah.
Maybe go to rehab.
I think it's like nicotine. You just never get away from it.
Yeah, you show me some pictures of it and then shock me. Permit? Do they
have a little permit patch? That
I need that on? Nicotine permit patch. Put on right here. Yeah, it's bad.
But throughout the whole trip, I thought it was we were fishing so hard for bonefish, right? And like we do in a lot of our trips, which makes it really challenging, is we just fish so hard all day, right? Because we're going after this fish. We're here. We've done all this planning, these logistics. We just want to fish. That's obviously the driving force of us being there. But I also really enjoyed a lot of the in-between moments on the boat and us getting to swim in the ocean, go snorkel a little bit behind the boat or playing music, hanging out, cooking in the sailboat and getting to spend some time just enjoying the sailboat, after a long day of fishing. I thought that was great.
Well, continuing down I don't know if you're ready to wrap her up, but one of my definitely favorite parts of this whole trip was that last day where we were all right, we kind of checked the tides. We were all right, the tide is the same as it has been the past few days. It's trash today for what we're trying to do.
Before that, we, every day we'd have to refill gas.
Yeah.
For the dinghies, just because we were going so far. And we bumped into a local guy who ended up being a fishing guide in the area.
Yep. Well, even past that, we bumped into his sister.
Yeah, that's right.
Who ran the gas station that we got.
Who ran the gas station
every day?
Whose brother?
She's like, my brother's a fishing guide.
Yeah, he fishes.
You should call him.
And I was like, yeah, sure, sure, yeah, absolutely. we kind of keep getting gas. I turn around and she hands me her phone on speakerphone with him on the phone and, you know, said something to him and then handed me the phone. I was like, hello? I don't know.
Hey, I fish.
I don't know. It's Bryant's getting groceries and stocking up on some ice or whatever. And I'm just sitting here with his, you know, at the gas station. Anyways,
but, yeah,
we ended up meeting this guy.
Yeah, we ended up running into him the next day and talking with him and talking about bonefish, talking about some of the areas. He kind of gave us some good intel, and like we had kind of told him what we had been learning so far, and he kind of helped justify some of the stuff we were saying.
Yeah.
And we decided to do a day with him, just book a day with him and have him come take us out.
So we probably kind of did it backwards from what, if you're watching this, you probably should do, which is call up a guide. If you're going to an area that has a guide in it, call up a guide and say, hey, I'm coming down. I want to bonefish for a day. Go bonefishing with them first and then go do it yourself. But anyways, we kind of did it backwards. We were really kind of at the end of our trip, and we're like, you know, it would be fun. Like, we have a few days left, but we're kind of at the end of the fishing. Let's take him out to the reef, because our boats could not make it to like the reef, that real big reef around the island. And
Scotty and I did.
Well, y'all did.
Yeah, we did.
A huge waste of time, but we did.
So we went fishing with this guy. Just caught a bunch of fish, some snapper and a barracuda, and I don't know. We caught a lot of different fish with him. Just running jigs or whatever. Yeah. I mean, it was a really fun day. It was a fun break from how hard we had been grinding. It was like almost more so a day of actually being on vacation.
It was very relaxing, is what
right.
it was.
Because like these trips are not relaxing. I don't want to say they're not fun, they're
not relaxing, but they're not as relaxing as you would think.
They're not relaxing for me at all.
It's work. It's work. It's fun, but it's work.
It is an incredible amount of work trying to, you know, when you get done fishing, you know, if you're on one of these trips by yourself with your buddies, you get to go have a couple beers and go to dinner. That's not what we get to do. You know, we have to sit down. You're dumping memory cards for 2 hours. You're repacking coolers for the next day. I'm redoing fishing stuff. You're drinking drinks on the boat, and it's hard to do.
It's a hard life.
You know, and you know, but it's like it's never a relaxing moment. But I feel like that was actually like I was on vacation that day with him, because I got to forget about. All right, you know, what gear are we going to bring? I really hope these dinghies work to get here. What shots are we going to get? Not that we didn't need to get shots with, you know, the reef fishing, but you know, it was a big pressure release valve for me off the trip.
He took care of everything for us. Yeah, it was a nice.
So that was fun. We got some meat for the rest of the trip, and then I'll definitely remember that for a long time. Going up on the beach and doing a beach barbecue. He kind of told us like on the island, like, oh, this area is okay if you go do a beach barbecue. So we went over to that area and
it was a good
whipped it up.
It was a good scene to kind of round out the trip.
Oh yeah, that was awesome.
Know, all the hard work, you know, all the planning that you had done on the front end, all the missed fish, all the celebrations of caught fish. And then we went on the absolute meat haul and got to put them over the flame.
Yeah.
And it was just...
They were good.
It was such a good moment there because our guide, you know, we all spoke the same language as far as just DIY fishing, and we all really bonded over fly fishing and stuff like that. He's a fly fishing guide, even though he took us for a meat haul with spinning rods. But like we all kind of spoke the same language, and he even joined us there on the shore. And it was just a good way to kind of put a cap on to end our session there.
Yeah, it was.
And I think it was so fun talking with him all day and just learning about the history of the island, learning about just his past with getting into fly fishing, because this is a guy, you know, from the Caribbean who is not that much older than us, grew up a completely different upbringing than we did.
Totally different.
But we all obviously have this shared thing with fly fishing. And even though we have different upbringings, it's like we still were able to relate and have such a fun day with him. And like, it didn't feel like, I don't know, we were trying to get along with him or something.
No,
right.
And that's what was, I thought, just a nail on the coffin at the end of the trip, to invite him out, and he wanted to come out and join us in the beach camp. And we cooked, the fish that we had just caught right on the beach there and ate it. Like I've never done anything like that. And that was really a great way to wrap the trip up. And
yeah. And hear about like, the different things in the fishery and like kind of how it is for him. Like what's affecting the bonefish or the reef fishing. And I enjoyed all that part too. Like hearing from him, like what was going on in his world from a fishing standpoint too.
If we had just came there and not met him, we wouldn't have gained the respect that we have for the fishery. It's different when it's from our eyes, from a, bunch of guys that grew up in the Southeast. It's different when it, if we just came and left, we would take only a little minuscule amount with us. But since we met him and he's like, yeah, I grew up here. This is my fishery. He told us all these facts about it. And it was just, we all just kind of sat there and we're quiet and we listened and we gained a new respect for this fishery as we were leaving. And it's now a lot more special to us versus if we had just shown up, caught some fish, went out.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Went back to Alabama or
now has a story
whatever.
For us, back history. Now it means something special to us. You're right.
Yep.
Yeah.
But I definitely recommend if you guys are interested in getting on going and doing a saltwater trip, book a saltwater guide, even if you're trying to do it as a DIY trip, unless you are pretty confident you've done stuff like it in the past or before. I mean, I really think getting a local guide, especially if you're out of country for the first day, and then even if you can't afford it for you can't afford to get a guide for a week, but go down there and get the first day, get a guide. And then the rest of the time, try to fish by yourself if you can't afford to, just fish with a guide. And I think it'll help you out a lot with the area, the fishing, what you're looking for, what the fish are doing, the tides, all that stuff would be really helpful.
Well, and even to that point, our buddy even mentioned that, he even said, a lot of his clientele cannot afford, a full week of guide trips with him. So,
yeah, I mean, that's a lot.
Take him out, take the guide early in your trip, and then, don't ask them putting in honey holes. Ask them to teach you how to fish for them.
Right.
Get some knowledge from that trip. Don't just use it to get on fish for that Instagram picture. Gain some knowledge from that so that you can extrapolate from that and do it yourself after that.
Yep. Take
your dinghy, rip it up to a flat you think is going to be good, and then just go from there.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Yeah, absolutely. So we wrapped up, our first ever bonefish trip together. What are you guys thinking now? Like, where's your head at? What's next?
Smallies are popping off back home, so I am looking forward to that.
I feel like what's next is the same thing. This, even though we put a different twist on this trip, and there's a little bit different subject, location, it's still that DIY, subject. It's still that DIY project that we're all trying to complete. And I think it's just we're gonna find another thing to do. And I mean this is what we like to do, even though it's work. I mean we're gonna find something else, and whether it's another bonefish trip, so be it. I think we're all pretty cool with that after this week. But we'll find something else, and yeah,
We're going back to the bus.
Yeah.
Short and simple. Next trip is back with the bus. This one, I don't know if hopefully the video kind of portrays it a little bit. I really feel like the sailboat is so similar to the bus. And when I'm in the bus, it reminds me of being on a sailboat. Everything's cramped. Everything's tight. You're on this little vessel, boat, whatever, bus. You're always scooting past each other. You're always in each other's way. Shit's always disorganized because we have too much stuff for how little room we bring. I always feel like the bus and the boat are such a similar vehicle that's just like taking you from fishing spot to fishing spot.
different vehicles.
Yeah.
Different vehicles, but same mission.
Yes.
Life in the slow lane with those.
Yes. And sailing is very much so like the bus because you are in the slow lane. You're not going anywhere fast. But the next trip, is certainly back with the bus. I don't know 100% where it's going to be yet. I'm just kidding. I know where I do, but y'all don't, and I guess that's kind of the point.
Yeah, but we'll definitely. I mean, I think this for all of us, fishing for bonefish, getting to have the experience, especially the time that we were here to really spend a lot of time figuring it out, learning, failing, day after day. I think it's definitely got me hooked, and I know all of you guys hooked to just looking on maps. Where are we going next? What's the next bonefish place are we going? What's the next whatever trip we're going? And I feel like this trip, like any of them, was just screaming adventure and anything that's something. It's we look at this stuff on a map, you hear about bonefish or whatever it is, but you just have to figure it out. And we had to go there and check it out. And so whatever that might be next is it's going to be the same deal.
So y'all are flying back tomorrow, right? And I'm going to get back on the boat.
Yeah. No,
and I'll meet you over there where we were at.
Steve and I are actually moving to the island. We've purchased a little piece of property.
We got
there.
Wi-Fi hotspots.
B, where are you going?
I'm gonna go eat some fried chicken.
That's
Back
fair.
in the US.
That's fair.
Some hot chicken.
All right, so I feel a little bad. We haven't had any Hobo Steve's words of wisdom for this adventure.
We didn't need that.
So I'm going to throw some down right now.
Oh, God, here we go. Have a seat.
Take a seat, guys. So no matter where your next adventure is, make sure to have fun and learn something new, because that's what it's all about.
Wow.
Boom. Amen.
Well, Steve's out.
We're gonna end it with that. That's some big wisdom right there. Hot take.
There we go.
But man, I'm excited to get going on this film. It'll be out by the time this podcast is out. So I hope you guys enjoy it. And
if you don't, it's okay.
It's okay.
We still love you.
Yeah, it's okay. Can't hit every time.
Well, I know it might be a little different. Hopefully some of you guys hopefully you guys like the saltwater stuff. We got a lot of requests from you guys to do a saltwater trip.
Yeah.
Some of you said redfish, but we got so many requests to just do a saltwater trip. And we kind of all came together and said, we want to do that saltwater trip. How are we going to make that happen? And the sailboat was the first thing that popped up as far as being on brand, kind of how can we do, and that was kind of the question, was how can we do a saltwater trip like the fans are requesting, but keep it kind of that short bus mentality.
Yeah, but it's something that makes sense for what we want to do.
Right.
How
the
we want
sailboat
adventure
was the answer to it. Mm-hmm. I mean, obviously we could have done this easier, but it wouldn't have been the same feel, I don't think.
Yeah.
As the sailboat was. So
yeah.
Hopefully you guys liked it. I hope that you guys are inspired to go check out, maybe a bonefish fishery. Maybe you grab a couple of your buddies, go head down to the flats somewhere, go do a DIY trip, go book a guide for a day, and then get out there for the next 3 or 4 days afterwards to go fish yourself and, really start putting it in, putting in a little bit of time. And I think you'll be definitely rewarded with some bonefish, but it's definitely a new thing for some of you guys, but hopefully nothing from the podcast or this film, kind of turns you off of it or dissuades you thinking that it's some uber expensive or some, unreachable goal. We really, truthfully, especially if you split it the 4 ways between us, did not spend very much money on this trip. And
we also did it pretty extreme. You don't have to rent a sailboat.
Exactly. Yeah. It was extreme because we obviously want to bring the video to you guys, but you could definitely do a bone fishing trip cheaper than what we did. But even then, what we spent was extremely reasonable for a week-long bone fishing trip.
Yeah.
So anyways, I hope that doesn't dissuade you guys. Hopefully you like it. Leave it in the comments below.
Peace.
Make sure you smash that like button. I don't know.
We're peacing.
There you go.
That's what the YouTubers say.
Yeah, we appreciate you guys listening. Check out the brand new merch line. We got some exclusive Sailboat Diaries gear and some new wildfly gear. Go check that out. All linked below. And we'll see you guys in the next adventure. Peace. We're going to eat some burgers.